I'm very excited to bring you today's guest, Jeroen Corthout, co-founder of Salesflare. Now, Jeroen does not have a BDR or an account executive or other sales contributor title, but that said, in his role as co-founder, he spends much of his time nurturing prospects, building relationships, and ultimately closing deals with new customers. So I wanted to bring him on the podcast because I think he has some very interesting insights into a couple of different things. One, managing time and efficiency as a seller, how to improve your own craft, how to transition out of another career field into software selling, and ultimately how to be more productive, how to build trust with your prospects, and how to be a consultant in the deal cycle. So with that said, welcome Jeroen to the podcast. Well, Jeroen, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, we usually start off, I want to hear a little bit about your background. I was looking at your LinkedIn this morning, and it looks like you actually started out more in the engineering world and the product side of things. But I understand now you're doing a lot of sales since you're the CEO of Salesflare. Tell us about how you got started, and then maybe share a little bit about how you thought to start Salesflare.
Yeah, actually, I'm indeed more of I like building stuff, but I like building stuff for people. And I think that first started really when building always, like when I was a kid, I would always build kind of stuff. But for people, when I was 15, 16 or so, I discovered the joy of building websites. And my dream was very quickly to start an agency. Seemed exciting to keep doing that for people. And that's actually engineering was always on my mind. I think my dad sort of made sure of that. He's a hardcore engineer himself.
Oh, right.
But at that point, I thought I was going to do software engineering. With my dream of doing stuff with the website, it seemed logical. I didn't end up doing that because in the end it just seemed a bit boring. The people that were doing it looked quite nerdy, and I remember even on the open day of university, what they were displaying wasn't necessarily too interesting. So I ended up doing electronical engineering with a minor in business management, because that always interested me. And then I went into biomedical engineering after that in my master's, because it just seemed more meaningful, and I could learn extra stuff, not just engineering things, but also medical things.
Nice.
It's very interesting. But then when I went applying for jobs, people were just offering me this sort of engineering jobs where I wouldn't be able to work with customers. I would be sitting in a back room and somebody else would have the conversation with customers. And that just didn't appeal to me. So after a few of these conversations, I just decided, like, this is enough. I'm going to apply to business school. And it's through business school that I then actually ended up directly in a marketing job. So I decided I wanted to start a company, and I thought, what is the best way to learn how to put a product in the market and all that? It's to do marketing, right? And I studied biomedical engineering, so I thought medical makes the most sense. Sure. So I went to do marketing at a pharma company, which wasn't at all what I expected. After like spending months to get a very specific job, I figured out that it was horribly boring and limited, and I didn't have a say in almost anything. So I then shifted gears, let's say, and about 8 months later, I found another job. And that was actually because I was thinking again, like, I want to start something, and trying all kinds of startup ideas. But one of them that was in front of me was helping pharma companies with their websites and all, because I discovered they were really bad at it. I was working in a pharma company, and everybody was coming to me when they wanted to launch a website, because nobody knew how it worked. Mm-hmm. And then I had dinner with a guy. He actually had a company that helped pharma companies with this kind of stuff. So I ended up joining them. And I worked there for 4 years, helping pharma companies and biotech companies mainly, with digitalizing their marketing, sales, and CRM and all that. After a while, I went part-time because, again, I wanted to start my own company. I tried a few startups, a few projects, let's say. I don't think any of them really is worthy to be called a startup even. And then, yeah, the one thing after the other. And actually, Salesflare grew from, I had met my co-founder when working on one startup. I met him in the Founder Institute. Mm-hmm. And one day he calls and he says, do you wanna go to Vegas with me? Because we're going to this conference and we still need a sales guy. And I was like, sure, why not? That was a big success. So we got a lot of leads for his company. It was a business intelligence software company.
All right.
And from there, we started collaborating. And at some point when we were following up all these leads, we just thought there must be a better way, because we were trying all kinds of systems and nothing worked for us. It would always sort of fall apart. We would forget to input some data here or there, and we would lose the overview, and our follow-up would start sucking. We would contact the same people again about something, or forget that we said something, or and then at some point we figured that the data input that we needed to do in these systems was actually really weird, in the sense that the data already existed in our mailbox or in our calendar or in our phone or in some company database or in their email signature or whatever, in different places. And if we could just pull that information together for us, like automatically, organize it almost fully, with a bit of manipulation, like call it curation needed, then we could make all this so much more efficient. And I remember one of the first slides I made was this how Salesforce has software, and they put they cross it through, they strike it through.
The whole campaign they did. Yep.
Yeah, we had that with CRM, because we were like, CRM is dead. It's for management. It's not for salespeople. It doesn't help us. We're gonna stop it. And we thought we were launching a sales platform that would actually help you sell.
That's really interesting. So I want to come back a little bit, in just a little bit, to your transition from being on the technical side to suddenly being thrust into a role where you're going out and actually trying to sell a solution. But before I get to that, I wanted to ask, so there's obviously so many CRMs and tools out there for reps and for management also. Tell us a bit about, what are some of the big differentiators in using a platform like Salesflare as opposed to, one of the other kind of CRM systems out there? Maybe a couple of the differentiators or value points that make you guys unique in comparison.
Yeah. So a lot of our medium-sized or larger customers, they compare it with Salesforce. There, it's very stark, the difference. So I don't really need to explain it. Even like, it's people hate Salesforce. It's slow.
Yeah.
It doesn't help them, and it's like they see Salesforce and it's like, and there isn't much convincing needed.
Sure.
If you compare us rather like the smaller companies, usually compares with Pipedrive or HubSpot. There it's more in the use that you will notice, in the sense that Salesflare, like if you look at a feature by feature basis, it's like, oh, email integration, calendar integration. But if you actually see how things work in the different apps or tools or software or whatever you want to call it, you'll see that we go about it in a totally different way. Like Salesflare is built from the ground up to be an automated system, to give you automated data input, and then also allow you to edit it manually, so you keep control. While the other systems come from a history of being manual systems, and then they started like syncing in some stuff, which means that inherently they're still manual systems which automate some stuff, but using the software still relies on assumptions that come from the manual data input world, if you know what I mean. So
Yeah.
it hasn't been rethought, which makes that, while on the surface it might seem similar, in the end, when you're using it, it's completely different.
Yeah, I always kind of scratch my head, especially as a frontline seller myself, when I realize how much of my time goes into re-entering. So we use Salesforce, full disclosure, at my current company.
Yeah.
And so much of my time goes into just manual updates and inputting information that, like you said, already exists out there. It's in my calendar, it's in my email inbox. It's, maybe in some cases even in a spreadsheet or something like that. Like there's just so many other inputs for the data. Why do I have to go re-enter that data and spend, I don't even know if I want to quantify how many hours a week just doing clerical things that I should be spending that time getting in front of customers, picking up the phone, following up on, next steps and things like that. Yet just so much of using some of those legacy CRM systems, and even some of the newer ones, is very manual in terms of the data side of things. So that's really interesting. And I definitely love what you guys are doing with the product to make it a little bit lighter weight from a clerical and admin standpoint for sellers.
Yeah, and it's not just that. It's not just that. It's just more lightweight. I mean, that's nice. I mean, we all have to do less work. Yay! It helps us more. Yay! But the real, I mean, reality is that, if in a manual system, you are not putting in the data in a very consistent way,
Right.
and it's complete, it's well done, it has every single detail in there, which a computer can very easily do, but for you it it takes some sort of commitment, which most people don't have, or almost anybody. And if you don't do that, then the system starts falling apart, and that means that, well, you might have, the first symptom is leads slipping through the cracks. It's very hard to replace someone when they're sick, like pick up where they left off.
Right.
When they leave, it's even worse. Like you have to start all the way from scratch, because you have no idea what they discussed or which customers, or it's a huge mess. It's very hard to make forecasts. It's you have all this kind of mistakes where marketing or customer service or whoever you're collaborating with, they look at the data and they see a certain thing, but in reality it's not like that, because it just wasn't put in, and all kinds of collaboration mistakes happen. And those are all things that, when you guys implemented Salesforce or anybody implements a CRM, you planned on solving, but you haven't solved because it just isn't filled out or used as expected. And the expectations, to be fair, are really high. Like you buy the software and the software expects you to be extremely committed, and that's just not realistic.
Right. I want to shift gears back to, you made it seems like a pretty sharp transition from being in the product and then later marketing world, and then ultimately you're now in a seat where you're selling accounts. Tell us about some of the things, and actually right before the call today, you shared a blog post that you put together, and I wish I would have seen this earlier. Apologies, I didn't look over this, but it's got some really great stuff in here. So it sounds like you've, in that process of transitioning from a product to marketing, then to sales facing role, have developed a couple of really great tactics for how to streamline your success. Tell us about what that transition was like, and what, maybe tips or tricks you can share that helped you accelerate your knowledge of selling and closing deals and things like that.
Yeah. I first experienced selling, when I was a teenager and stuff, but really like serious selling was when I was working at that marketing consultancy. I was an account manager, and I could really do basic selling, in the sense that I'd go to a customer, I'd find out what sort of issue they had or what they wanted to do. Then we figured out the best way to do it. I would scope out the amount of work that was needed, what had to be done, how long it was going to take, what it was going to cost. I made a proposal, wrote that all out,
Sure.
got it back to them, discovered things, the whole thing, which is often lost when you're selling products, because I think it's very valuable experience to have this sort of service experience and take it into products. Because what most often happens is that when you sell a SaaS product, you just think like, okay, this is one SaaS product. It's the same for everyone, and everyone wants the same. The first part is true. It's the same SaaS product, but not everybody wants the same. Like people get your software for different reasons. Plus, and especially with a CRM, for instance, in our case, people can use it in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And discovering that is essential to selling the product, but it's also essential to improving the product. And in very early stages, I honestly did everything from finding leads to doing demos to putting them on the software, connecting their emails, showing them around, setting some stuff up together with them, supporting them afterwards, the whole thing. Very, very manual. But if I would start all over again, I would do that all over again, because that was so valuable for me to get to know everything, for us to know what to build, for us to close actually a maximum amount of deals also, because in the beginning you don't get a lot of leads, so you better close a maximum of them.
Yep.
Yeah. Actually, when we turned our request a trial here, when we turned it into just start a trial here, our conversion rate massively dropped. But of course, we got way more people on the trial, so it sort of evens out. Of course,
evens out. Yeah.
Unless you haven't figured out how an onboarding should work through that manual process, because your onboarding needs to be good to still have a decent conversion rate after you turn on the trial.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious. I'm looking at your pricing and things like that on the page. From a business standpoint at Salesflare, are you guys, hoping to continue kind of going upstream into more enterprise-sized customers, or are you hoping to sort of go downstream and continue to dominate in the smaller businesses, or maybe a little bit of both? Those don't have to be mutually exclusive, but I'm kind of curious what, as you guys grow and scale your sales organization, what types of deals and size of deals are you guys hoping to attain more of?
Yeah, well, we are focused on small and medium-sized businesses, and I honestly don't think we'll do a lot of enterprise unless these enterprises are parts of those think as a small or medium-sized business. That happens. We have customers like that. The thing is, from a certain level, when an enterprise really implements a CRM system, it's not so much about the end users anymore and whether the software is practical and works well and solves their issues. It's really about solving the issues on the organizational level. So you need a totally different type of software, in which you can basically build your own thing if you just hire enough consultants. And then you end up with something like Salesforce. So that's not our space. That's not our focus. But we definitely want to do more medium-sized deals. It's actually medium-sized customers require just about the same amount of work as when you onboard one user in many cases, and you earn way more. They stay way longer. So it's on a business level. There's no doubt that onboarding more medium-sized customers is better.
Yeah. It's funny. I manage a book of existing customers in my current role, and the sort of quote unquote medium-sized customers are my favorite ones, because they can use our product well enough on their own, and they don't need, the smaller customers, they need a lot of hand holding. they're, in their minds, they're making a significant investment in something. So they're going to obviously demand the time and output, they're going to demand as many resources as they can get. And then on the other side, I've got a couple of really large scale customers that are, would be considered enterprise, higher ticket, larger contracts, and just larger and more complex relationships. And those also take a lot of time because there's a lot of moving parts. They've made a sizable investment. There's lots of different orgs and stakeholders, and there's, meetings, and they want a customized implementation of the software. And so I think you're right that the medium-sized ones are that sweet spot where they're big enough that the ARR is valuable for the company, but they're not so big that they're going to demand all of these customizations and unique implementation requirements and things like that. So that's, fantastic. And it sounds like you guys have sort of carved out where your sweet spot is.
No, that sounds absolutely correct. Like the medium-sized ones are the ones that are all nice to us, of course.
So right now, how are you generating pipeline and capturing more customers? I know on your site you've got a trial option. Are you guys? It sounds like you're probably doing a lot of different demand gen. Do you do any outbounding in your current role, or do you have someone in place at the company that does cold calling or kind of cold outbound type generation activities?
No, currently zero of that. We get everything inbound. We found so far, but we never decided this is the only way. But so far, it seems that people look for CRMs at specific moments and don't necessarily feel like switching at any other moment. So we try to capture as many people as possible that are looking at that moment. And that happens, or like that people have a few ways of going about this. One is asking other people. So we get a lot of word of mouth. Secondly, it's Googling and checking review sites. We get quite some traffic from that. And then we also, like to our point a bit earlier, like people use software for lots of different reasons. Right. Some of our best content marketing is articles that focus on a specific way or a specific use case for Salesflare, where we show Salesflare a bit. Those are the best, at least lead generating articles we have, which is our third channel is content marketing.
That's great. Yeah, you guys are getting so much that's coming inbound, and I think more and more, and I'm sure you guys have seen this as well. But as I get more into this profession, and back when I started in 2012, it was pretty heavy. The roles I had were pretty heavy outbounding. It was, here's a list of people to call, start sending some cold emails. And this is even before LinkedIn was kind of widely adopted as a channel for prospecting. And then as I've gone on more and more, the companies I've been at have adopted more of a content strategy and a, demand generation where there's inbound leads, and the focus is on facilitating a purchase instead of trying to convince somebody. And I shouldn't use the word convince, but instead of reaching out cold and trying to persuade somebody to first take a discovery call and evaluate your product out of the blue. So I definitely like it now, knowing that most of the people I work with that are evaluating our solution already have some familiarity. There's already a project that they're working on that's relevant. They're already evaluating our competitors, which is, can both be nerve-wracking, but also exciting because, you've got a chance to win against the competition. But it's definitely much easier than how I used to do things earlier on at some of the companies I was at, where it was pick up the phone, call someone out of the blue, try to get them interested in what you're selling, even though they've maybe never heard of you or have no interest in a project that's related to the solution I was selling, just to try to pick up the phone and persuade them to take time out of their day to learn about the product and then slowly try to nurture them through. It's been nice with this content model. And it just seems like most SaaS companies at this point are on that train where you've got to have a really good demand generation model in place so that you get enough inbound leads that are warm enough that, it makes sense. It makes the best use of the rep's time to manage those through the funnel. I am curious though, once someone comes to your site and maybe requests a trial or a demo, Do you guys do like a discovery call and then maybe a separate demo call later on and then a pricing call later? Or do you guys try to consolidate those all into one conversation where you give an overview, demo the product, and then, hope to close the deal or pretty quickly get pricing in front of somebody so they can make a decision?
They can just see pricing on the site, so we cannot afford not doing that. So there's no pricing
Sure.
discussion or call or so needed. We have a book a demo button on the site since 2 months ago. We added that just to test what it would do. So far, it looks like the results are good. So we have one now on the homepage and on the pricing page. It depends a bit on what people, how they want to engage with us. We don't require them to go through any process. If people want to book a demo first, then see the software, that's fine. If people try the software, then book a demo, or try the software and then as they are about to decide want to talk to us, or afterwards they want some, it all doesn't matter to us. We will be there along the way.
Sure.
People buy many different ways. It's usually we try to be helpful, so we try to figure out together with people whether Salesforce is what they need, and if so, how Salesforce can fill their needs, how it can help them in the best possible way. So we help them get set up and all. The rest just goes from there. We don't, I mean, they know the pricing. They sometimes ask, and I'm like, it's on the pricing page, but
Yeah. What are I'm curious what some common objections you guys get are from customers or prospects, and then how do you guys overcome those?
Good question. Common objections. Yeah, so we don't really try to sell to anyone who isn't already convinced they need something. So that's why I don't think we get a lot of objections, really.
That's good. And that kind of goes back to the demand model where you've got leads coming in. For the most part, you probably have folks that are evaluating something and looking to make a decision on a CRM or a sales enablement tool, not trying to convince somebody cold to look at this or rip and replace.
So you don't really need to deal with objections per se. I think it's more about making sure that what it is they're looking for, that this is matched or not matched, and if it's not, then point them somewhere else. That's the main exercise, and then helping them be successful, which you can of course count outside of sales, but it all flows over from the one into the other. It's actually at Salesforce, it's the same person taking care of this. So
awesome. In reading your blog post here, you have a whole point on focusing on onboarding. What are some things that sales reps can do to improve their onboarding experience, maximize that time to come up to speed on a product or a process, and ultimately ramp faster and find more success out of the gates?
Yeah, I think most of the work there is not for sales reps. Probably it's good that the product team makes the onboarding easier. That's ideal. But then next to that, there are things that will always stay with sales reps to a certain extent. I think, for instance, training. I often have to stress this, but training goes beyond explaining the software and how it can be used. It's also about figuring out together with the customer what it is they need and how they probably should use the product, because products can often be used in many different ways. And if they don't decide how they're going to use it, especially if they're working together with a team, then they're going to be way less successful. Like, imagine a team, they just all know how the software works, but all of them sort of decide to use the software in a different way. Then it becomes very hard to collaborate with each other, or at some point to even extract insights. So that's something that is often overlooked that you can't overlook. Then it's figuring out all the different barriers that people have where they might give up, and try to make this as frictionless as possible. So if people need help with data imports or integrations that are probably then help them with that. And then it's really about opening up that relationship, making sure that people trust you. That's something you need to build, obviously. It's by being helpful rather than salesy.
Right.
You'll see that people open up, and whenever they have an issue along the way, they're like, okay, I know I can rely on salesperson or on the company uh, to fix what it is that I need, and that's really invaluable.
That brings me to a really good question that I had for you. A lot of my listeners sell to more technical or even operational roles. And I know sometimes those types of personas in a business, they don't want to deal with a sales rep. They don't want to feel like they're getting sold a used car or something like that. They want to work with a consultant or a partner. And you kind of come from that world, so maybe it was a little bit easier for you to it was probably pretty clear because it sounds like you've been doing proposals and sort of that more service side of things for a really long time. What are some things that a lot of my listeners might have started in a role where they had a manager or leadership that was very salesy and it's all about numbers and push and persuade? What are some things that my listeners can do to kind of reprogram a little bit and shift away from the used car sales to more of a solutions, partnership, consulting type sales?
Yeah, what many companies do there is start this kind of role. It's called technical sales or solution sales, whatever. Somebody who comes from a technical background and does sales. That's a common way of solving it. But what you can also do is if your salesperson understands most of it but is not fully technical, you can also basically make the developers very available to that person to solve whatever technical question they have. So what we do, for instance, is we have a role called support hero, and that means that there's always one of the developers standby to help with any technical question or figure out any technical issue or whatever that customers have at that very moment. And they're right next to the person who's talking to the customers at that moment, and that really helps as well. So you don't necessarily need someone technical then taking care of your sales or support.
I like that a lot. And I do that quite a bit in my current role. I'll bring in, I don't ever want to try to assume. And this is something I learned early on selling to pretty technical buyers was as a rep, I'm a facilitator, right? I'm someone who aligns resources that this prospect or potential customer needs to make a decision, to complete an evaluation. I've heard a lot of reps that have been in similar roles will make assumptions about what their buyers do and what they know, especially on the technical side. That's a slippery slope. So I tend to just do my best at bringing in the right resources and knowing what those are internally. If I've got, for example, I had someone ask just a couple of weeks ago for a conversation around our API, and I'm not an expert on APIs, and I don't intend to become one. And I certainly don't want my prospective buyers to be, on a call with me, listening to me talk about APIs, because I don't know what I'm talking about. So knowing who in the company to go to that can speak, to the customers about our open API and how to integrate other systems with ours and things like that, is really, I think an important tip for sellers out there who are working with more technical or more advanced buyers, who really just want to be aligned with the right resource. They don't want, they don't want a sales pitch. They don't want to be, they don't want to be stuck on a call with someone who doesn't know anything about APIs, trying to tell them about APIs, because that just kind of comes across as condescending. So I think your points are really valid, which are, really bring the right resources in. And if you're selling, you're playing quarterback, or you're playing sort of the facilitator of those resources that the company has. And it's not about at that point selling, but more about being an enabler and a someone who's going to help their business be successful, and not just someone who's trying to close a deal and move on to the next one.
No, that's actually a really good tip as well. I used to do that in my previous job also. Is just at any point when you feel like it's good to involve someone, just do that. A lot of people feel, how can I say, too proud to do that, and they think they have to solve everything, but it's not
Mm-hmm.
true. It's often a very good idea. So, like the biggest deal I sold in that marketing consultancy, I just figured that I'm gonna bring the CEO in, and he will have to
Mm-hmm.
do some of the work, but at least then we sold a massive deal, and I wouldn't have ever been able to sell it on my own, and it was actually a part of the thing was also a data deal, and then I involved the data guy. You just bring in the right people at
Yeah.
the right time into the deal, and that just ups the credibility, makes the customer confident about your ability to deliver. So never hesitate to do that, I would say.
Absolutely. So tell us about the plans for growth for Salesflare. It's a new year. I'm sure you guys are going to be expanding the team, and it sounds like you're adding customers pretty quickly. What does 2021 look like for the team? Are you guys doing a mass hiring? You building a sales team, or is that still to be determined? I'm curious to hear kind of what the growth strategy is for the year.
Yeah, the sales team part is to be determined. We're definitely gonna retry outbound this year again. We're definitely putting more focus on getting closer to the customer. We always do that, but we plan to do an extra effort there. Apart from that, it's mostly working further on our marketing, um, upgrading our products, less on the sales side, I would say.
That's interesting. So more on improving the offering and making it an offer that a prospective customer can't refuse, versus investing too much in just the sales engine right now.
Yeah, definitely.
No, that seems like a great model. Do you guys, I know it looks like you guys are based out of Belgium. Do you guys have a pretty heavy US presence yet, or what's the strategy for kind of getting into new, I guess, foreign markets for you guys?
I think of our revenue, it's not even 10% in Belgium, and it's about, I think 40% or something in the US and Canada. And then we have a lot from the UK, from Australia, the Nordics, Germany, France. In general, I think 60 countries or more.
Wow.
The only issue there really is, well, first it's language. We are mostly strong in English spoken markets because we just offer our software in English now.
Right.
And secondly, it's time zones. So it might be that we have to get on early calls and late calls, spanning all the way from Australia to San Francisco.
Sure. Yeah.
But that's just the reality nowadays, I would say. The main issue when you're remote selling is really time zones, because all the rest doesn't matter.
That's a good point too. I wanted to ask you about some tips and tricks for remote selling. Most of us now, with the current situation with the coronavirus, are all shifting to remote, and a lot of my listeners, that was probably a little bit of a surprise and unexpected. And they may have gone from working in a big sales pit with 50 other reps or even 10 other reps, and then all of a sudden they're now home, maybe in a house or apartment, trying to motivate themselves to pick up the phone and do the next follow-up. What are some things that you've done? And it sounds like you've got a lot of experience working remotely, and it sounds like you've built and scaled teams remotely. What are some things that an average rep can do to improve their remote selling skills and their situation?
Yeah, in terms of motivation, what I would say is focus on input. Really keep your motivation up by looking at, like, okay, you basically take what you need to achieve, which is probably some kind of revenue target or something, and then you break that down into, okay, if I want to win that many deals, how many deals do I need to create? How many qualified leads do I have? And how
Right.
many qualified leads do I need then on a monthly basis or on a weekly basis? And then at least you know what you have to deliver every week or every month or even every day. If you even, not for qualified leads probably, but if you say, okay, to get these qualified leads, I need to place that many calls or send that many emails or whatever, or have that many Zoom calls. Then you could even get to a target on a daily basis, and then you just hit that target. And every time you hit it, no matter whether this is a good day or a bad day or a good week or a bad week, if I just keep hitting this, I will hit my target or I'll overshoot it. And then you can derive pleasure from seeing progress in that way, instead of like working towards this huge goal for the year, because it's very hard to stay motivated based on that. And then next to that, something I figured a few months ago is, like, it's very easy to get this kind of Zoom fatigue if you go from the one meeting into the other.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you just take every conversation as a new customer to explore, like to understand deeply, and take some time for small talk, really make a connection, I think you can get way more out of it as a human being, much more satisfaction, and that doesn't only reflect on your motivation; it also reflects on the relationships you build with
Yeah.
customers. And it will ultimately make you much more successful. So it's only a win-win. It's just about figuring that it's not just all a bunch of calls. It's all different people that are ready to meet you and that you can have a nice chat with. Just changing that perspective did it for me, actually. So.
Uh, First of all, love both of those pieces of advice. Side note for my listeners on the topic of your recommendation to sort of work backwards. What's your ultimate outcome you're trying to achieve, whether that's a quota attainment or an earnings goal? I actually put together a spreadsheet that I built when I first took the role that I'm in now, that sort of worked backwards from, and you can input it. It's all customizable. So you can input a quota in, you can put your commission rate in, and then you can put in how many opportunities you need at an average deal size to know how many, basically how many ops you need to close enough deals to achieve your number and achieve your earnings goal. So if anybody wants that, reach out to me. I'll send that spreadsheet over so you can, use it in your own book of business and with your own quota and earnings. And so I love that advice of being able to work backwards to what the ultimate outcome is. And then your second piece of advice, I've also implemented myself too, which is it's really easy to get Zoom fatigue, especially right now. If you're on back-to-back calls, whether that's internal or external meetings. And I love what you said about slowing things down and just taking time to really build the relationship. It's easy to just go through the motions when you're working remote and you're dialing into Zooms multiple times a day. It's easy to just kind of get into like the same spiel over and over again and repeat the same things over and over again and treat everybody the same. Don't fall into that trap. You're exactly right that you need to slow those down, spend some time on the front end building a relationship. And then something else that I've done for anyone else out there who's wondering how they can kind of break up the monotony of Zoom calls is try to really be yourself on these calls. One of the cool things about, if there's a silver lining to all this working from home and being remote, is that, your background in a Zoom call shows, the room you're in, and whatever room that is, you can kind of customize and tailor to who you are. And so, Jeroen, you might have seen I have a guitar in the background of my office here, and I've got some other things that are nice conversation starters, and I really try to personalize my meetings and just really try to be myself. I'm in my house, I'm in my home office, and I've got my things behind me, just like I would if I were at a desk in an office. But spend some time actually trying to build a real relationship with prospects or customers versus just some kind of Zoom relationship. And you're exactly right that in doing that, you're going to see it gets easier to work with prospects and to build that trust that we talked about throughout this session today. That trust that's really required to help them make the decision and help them help to kind of earn the opportunity. So I love those pieces of advice. I think the last thing I'd love to ask you here is you're obviously a really busy person. You're a co-founder of a company, you're selling deals. It sounds like you're working with the engineers on your team. I'm sure there's financial activities for the business that you have to take care of as well. Marketing, marketing activities, all kinds of different aspects of what you do. What are some tips you have for time management that might be applicable to sellers in managing their day and managing their calendar?
I would say what I prefer to do is block off certain parts of, I mean, certain parts of my day to have calls and batch them up so that it's not like I'm doing some focus work here and then I have a call in between and then some focus work again. That just doesn't work. It's
Right.
very hard to shift from the one type of work to the other. So I like to batch it up. So if you, for instance, have a calendar scheduler, you could just say, okay, these hours are fine to talk to customers, but in these hours I focus on writing proposals, whatever it is you do that's applicable. And then yeah, that's actually the best thing to do, and plan your day. If you do these two things, so what we do is we plan in the growth team. So on the business side, we plan on a bi-weekly basis. So we plan what we're going to do on that horizon. Let's say in the development team, they do it every week. And then on a daily basis, we have a stand-up meeting in which we say what we've done the previous day and what we're going to go do that day, which also sort of forces you to think through what you're going to do in a certain day, which is good. You build some consistency there. And just knowing what you're going to do in a day just makes so much difference, because then you know where to focus, you know?
That's excellent. Yeah, I do the same. I try to, and I fairly recently got into the habit of doing this really well, which is planning out my week and then sort of truing up to those goals every single morning. And I use a pretty rudimentary method for that, which is just sticky pads and notes. And I try to write down the top 3 things that I need to accomplish in any given week. And then sometimes I break those out to, if I get one thing done today, that's going to move my business forward. What is that one thing, and write that down and just knock that out first. That's been one of the biggest things for me is I tend to be a procrastinator. So when I have a big proposal or a big email response or a cold call to make or a demo to prep for, sometimes I wait until the last possible second. And what I've found is it's better to take the hardest thing you've got to do in the week or in a day and just knock that thing out first thing in the morning. And then once it's done, you're like, hey, I'm so accomplished. Now I can go move on to that next tough thing and just sort of work that way down the list. So absolutely, I'm a big advocate of planning. I love the stand-ups, and I've done those before. My current company doesn't do daily stand-ups, but we do a weekly stand-up to kind of recap the prior week. And, for the listeners, even if you're at a company that doesn't do daily or weekly stand-ups, you can still have your own sort of personal stand-up where you reflect on what you accomplished yesterday or last week and what you hope to accomplish tomorrow or next week. So very good advice there. And, it sounds like you've been able to manage a pretty crazy schedule by following those rules.
Yeah, definitely. Otherwise, it's very hard. It just planning, blocking off stuff, and what you said. I think they call it "Eat the Frog" or something. I think there's a book called like that.
Is that a book or?
Yeah, Eat That Frog. It's called, and eating the frog is exactly what you say. Tackle the most difficult thing first. That's also really good advice, because otherwise you keep procrastinating on that, like you said. Just doing that makes you feel invincible for the rest of the day.
Awesome. Well, we're coming up here on about an hour, so we're probably about better to wrap. I know you're a busy guy. How can my listeners get in touch with you if they want to connect on Salesflare, or they want to pick your brain on anything? What's the best way to get in touch?
If you want to learn more about Salesflare, you can just head to salesflare.com, and Flare is Flare. You can read all about the software there. You can even see it without signing up right now. I think we have an experiment running
Cool.
that if you try it for free, you can see the software first, and then you can create an account by connecting your emails. You get a trial of anywhere between 7 and 30 days. It's another onboarding experiment that we have, which is becoming a final thing, because we've seen that it's good to motivate people to set up the software properly. So we give more days on the trial when you set it up better. Like there's different steps you can take, and then you get more days. Anyway, if you want to get in touch with me, you can do that on LinkedIn. It's probably the best place, but don't forget to add a personal message. Otherwise, I have no way to distinguish you from all the spam I get on a daily basis. If you add a personal message, you will stand out, at least if it's a thoughtful one, and I'll definitely connect with you and we can have a chat.
Awesome. Anything else you'd like to share to the listeners before we wrap up?
No, not really.
All right. Well, Jeroen, thanks so much for being on the show today.
Yeah, this was fun.